Hello, this is the Microsoft Licensing and Audits Open Q&A webinar presented by Miro Consulting. Here at Miro Consulting, we specialize in software license audit defense, subscription management, and cloud services for Oracle, IBM, Microsoft, and Adobe. My name is Sean Donohue, and I'm the VP of Marketing, and joining me today is Tim Hegedus, Senior Managing Analyst of our Microsoft Practice Manager. If you have any questions during the broadcast, please use the question box in your webinar control panel, and we'll answer them at the end of the session. Your questions will only be visible to the presenters. So with that, I'm going to start with our first question. Tim, please take it away.
Thank you very much, Sean. Appreciate that. Just want to take a moment to recognize and send our thoughts down to the Houston area and the Louisiana area, and hope that things are improving for those individuals down there, as well as for our colleagues, our clients, our partners, our friends, and our family that might be inundated by Hurricane Harvey. So let's begin with our open Q&A for Microsoft. And our first question is, what is Microsoft 365 and how does it differ from Office 365? Microsoft 365 is essentially just Microsoft's rebranding of the Secure Productive Enterprise, or SPE. It represents a bundle of which Office 365 is part, right? So it also includes, in addition to Office 365, Windows as a Service. That's Windows 10 licensed in the per user metric versus the traditional per device construct. And it also includes Enterprise Mobility and Security, which used to be referred to as Enterprise Mobility Suite. Either way, they're both referred to as EMS. EMS is Microsoft's security suite of programs, which includes data classification, encryption, threat protection, and it also includes some other management tools and a management portal for single sign-on, mobile device management, desktop virtualization, and some others. Now, Microsoft 365 comes in the E3 and E5 flavors. That E5 in particular replaces the E4 plan, and it offers an additional level of security features as well as some additional telephony features. Now, I guess the question would be whether or not the suite is the right approach for everyone, and the answer is most definitely not. There are many functions within Microsoft 365 that already have a solution. An investment in those solutions is already in place, and it might not be appropriate at this time. There are also caveats to any subscription service, and I think as we go along, we'll hit on one or two of them. But in the right place for the right organization, Microsoft 365 might be worth considering. I just mentioned Windows as a Service, and the question really follows on to that first question. What is this thing called Windows as a Service? Well, in the traditional construct, you'll probably recall that Windows was licensed by device. It came with the computer primarily pre-installed by the original equipment manufacturer, or OEM, somebody like a Dell. And it lived and died with that device. It couldn't be imported to another device except for some failure, catastrophic failure at that. But it was, quote unquote, I'm doing air quotes for those of you who are watching me closely, it's free, right? Now, to expand the features of Windows Professional, right, things like branch cache or the added components of MDOP, or the Microsoft Desktop Optimization Pack, were added. This created an upgrade, if you will, to Windows Enterprise, right? And in order to take advantage of those, or other products or other features rather, such as AppV or application virtualization, Windows Enterprise is required. Now, as I said, it's an upgrade. So more specifically, the client doesn't buy Windows Enterprise, but rather upgrades to it. But in all of these cases, the history is that it was always licensed by device. Now, that all changes with Windows as a service. This is licensed by user. And it's, I would say, something of a nod to users of multiple devices, or perhaps those users under a BYOD, a bring your own device policy. Microsoft allows the use of Windows across the range of devices, so long as the user is the primary user of at least one device licensed with Windows 10. Right, now that's a little crazy, right? But to simplify things, think about the device that is issued to you at work. So that laptop is configured with Windows 10, Windows 10 Enterprise, and it is issued to you, so you become the primary user. Therefore, now you become a candidate for Windows as a service. You can use Windows Enterprise on that work PC, as well as on your own PC at home, or perhaps on your smartphone if it's supporting Windows. Okay, this one came in. It says here, I attended your webinar on the new Microsoft service models. Have they changed, and what impact have you seen? Well, over the last month or so, I would say Microsoft changed the current branch, or CB, and the current branch for business, or CBB, to the semi-annual channel. And parenthetically, they added the word target to the new moniker for current branch. So now you have semi-annual targeted for current branch, which is really for very, very small organizations or home users, and the current branch for business, which is for enterprises and small, medium, and large-sized businesses. Now, this remains, right? This new semi-annual channel, as its name implies, remains a twice per year update. It's scheduled for the March and September timeframes, or that's the target at least, and it retains its 18-month support timeline for each release. Now that's 18 months, okay? The long-term servicing branch, or LTSB, has also been renamed. It's now called the long-term servicing channel, or LTSC, but we'll probably keep calling it LTSB. And by the way, Microsoft recommends that the deployment of updates within the LTSC or B begin right away on selected devices. This is with an eye toward quickly, underline, emphasize quickly, to full deployment. And this enables, in Microsoft's view, this enables the organization to gain access to new features, experiences, and an integrated security environment as quickly as possible. So the second part of the question is, what have we seen? In terms of what Miro has really experienced, the trend had been, and kind of still is, to go with the LTSB for Windows. Many clients are saying that they intend to stay on that channel because of its familiar 5+5 support cycle. Now that means 5 years of premier support or primary support, and then 5 more years of extended support. But Microsoft maintains that the LTSC is not intended as the de facto standard across the company, that it's intended for specialized systems such as devices that control medical equipment, devices that control point-of-sale systems, or even ATMs. In other words, computers that don't run Office which Microsoft then classifies as general purpose machines. These devices, so says Microsoft, are better suited to the CBB or the semi-annual channel. But some organizations remain quite adamant. I will tell you that. Working with several, they are sold on the LTSB. But Microsoft will not publish updates for Windows in that channel. Instead, new releases in that channel are made available every 2 or 3 years, and an organization can choose to install them or not. But it's that flexibility combined with that stability that the organizations are really desiring. But from our perspective, and something that we tell our clients, some awareness is key. Microsoft's LTSC service model will only support the silicon, that is the chip that comes with the device, at the time that the LTSC is released. So what that means is that backporting older releases onto newer hardware, such as because of a catastrophic failure, might not work and definitely will not be supported. Now, the other matter facing administrators is the disparity between Windows under the various service models. You take this as a warning, if you will. They're going to be different between the two service models. And multi-device users, especially those using their own device, will have to deal with this disparity. So we're thinking that the thinking on the part of many of our clients is going to change once they start to encounter this disparity and calls to the support desk because certain functionality is not available on the machine that one of their clients is using. Our next question is, can you explain, I'm reading here, can you explain the trade-in policy for Windows Server 2016? What are the caveats? Sure. First, it requires software assurance. Second, it requires continued software assurance. So let's roll back here a little bit to 2012, right? When that was released, the primary editions of Windows Server, Standard and Data Center, were licensed in the per processor metric. When Windows Server 2016 was released last October, that metric changed to per core, right? And just as a footnote here, everything I'm talking about applies to System Center as well. So this trade-in program, more officially termed the grant program, involves exchanges of licenses in the old metric for ones in the new metric. But there are some conditions, and we kind of went over this in one of our recent webinars. But I think it bears repeating. So let me do that for you. There are minimums associated with the new licensing, right? Each processor requires at least 8 cores or 4 2-pack per core licenses. And each server requires at least 16 cores or 8 2-pack per core licenses. Now, the other part of this is that as we speak here today, the current cost of Windows Server 2016 in this new metric is 1/8 of Windows Server 2012 in the old metric. So from that purely arithmetic perspective, it's a wash. And the fact is that the customer may even gain a few free, I'm doing those air quotes again, free licenses in order to be made whole, right? That's because they have to grant you a minimum of 8 cores, 4 licenses per processor. And if you have many, many more, then you're actually going to get some additional licenses. However, and there's always the however, only the license is free. As we mentioned, right, software assurance must continue on those licenses, and those fees must be paid, right? So it's entirely possible, in fact probable, that your software insurance investment will increase. So budgeting correctly for that is very, very, very important. I think it's also important to reiterate a couple of other changes. Back when version 2012 was released, it marked the first time that both the standard edition and the data center edition were technologically equivalent. They differed essentially only through their virtualization rules. Well, that has changed for Windows Server 2016. Data Center Edition supports things like storage spaces direct and storage replica, what else? Shielded virtual machines, network stacking. And none of those are available in Standard Edition. Nano Server is, okay, and that brings up a whole nother discussion about which we invite you to call us. But we're speaking of virtualization, right, as being the defining factor that differed the older version. But those rules have changed as well. And this really surrounds Standard Edition. In the older metric, each license of Standard Edition allowed up to 2 virtual instances. That's each license allowed up to 2 virtual instances. Now, under the per core metric, it's each time the physical server is fully licensed. That makes a difference. That makes a huge difference. So that means that the minimum purchase of 8 licenses, right? 16 cores for the server. That's the minimum, right? Those 8 licenses must be purchased simply to acquire the rights to 2 more virtual instances. All right? The math indicates that this could still work, and stacking licenses may still be an option. But there's a lot more to this, ladies and gentlemen, and we invite you really to call us and talk to us about it before you decide to go that route. We'll also talk to you about something referred to as step-up licenses, and that's why we're so deliberate on talking about trade-in, because it's not exactly a trade-in in the truest sense of the word. Well, here's a great question, right? Is SQL Server Developer free? Yes, it is. SQL Server Developer Edition is now free, but only with a subscription to Visual Studio Dev Essentials, which also happens to be free. And it offers all the same functionality as Enterprise Edition, right? The same capacities, the same management capabilities, the same security, the programmability, the analytics, everything is the same. But it's only for the development environment. Now, this is pretty much old news, right? Microsoft made this change back at the end of March, I believe. But the really good news may be overall cost savings through the elimination of some Visual Studio with MSDN licenses. Right? Now, if you're already licensing your test dev environment, that is, it isn't segregated for use by specific MSDN users, then you can consider using the developer's existing Windows CAL licenses, right? Which they will have for things like Exchange Server and so on and so on. But you can use those Windows CAL licenses in conjunction with SQL Server Developer Edition, right? And see how you compare the cost of that configuration with, say, Visual Studio with MSDN, right? I think you'll find out that it is far less costly in that realm. Not for everybody, but perhaps an option for some organizations, or at least some of the people in those organizations. Azure, the bane of many existence, right? Azure AD, Active Directory, is it required for Office 365? Well, again, the short answer is yes, right? And it already comes fully integrated with Office 365, but also with Salesforce and Box and others, right? But before you start thinking, oh, well, there's another expense, right? Let me explain a little bit. There are currently 4 offerings or editions of AD. The free version is really what accompanies Office 365 as the standard. It has a very, very basic function. It's really there for simple single sign-on, simple authentication, so on and so forth. Then there is the Essentials offering for about $1 per month per user, right? Relatively modest investment there. Then there are 2 premium programs. The first one, Premium 1, costs about $6 a month. And the second offer goes for about $9 per month. And these are per month, per user fees. And there's obviously, for that cost, there's obviously difference in the capabilities. For example, single sign-on is limited to just 10 applications for user for the free and for the essentials or basic editions, right? There is no limit for the premium editions. So if you have many, many, many applications to which a user must authenticate, premium might be worth considering. Now, for the free and essential or basic editions, another marketing change by Microsoft, the administrator can review up to 3 very, very straightforward, basic, rudimentary, elementary reports that detail how Office 365 was used and some of the security information surrounding its use. There's much, much more in-depth advanced reporting for the premium editions. For multi-factor authentication, right? Essentially, there is none for either the free or basic or essentials version of AD. However, you can use a add-on by providing a per user or per authentication multi-factor authentication provider. Okay, this is not free, as the name implies. It's an add-on. Costs about $1.50, $1.40, I think, is the current price per user per month. But still cheaper than either of the premium editions. But the premium editions include that. Now, why the $3 difference between Premium 1 and Premium 2? Well, Premium 2 offers some identity protection and privileged identity management functionality that Premium 1 does not. So if you don't think you need them, then Premium 1 might be the right tool, or you could go all the way down to the Essentials version with the multi-factor authentication, and you still get the majority of your functionality. But the question is, which is right? And that is truly a function of the timing of your transition into the cloud as well as your need. So you might want to start with the basic or the free version and then kind of grow into the premium editions in the future. One more question just kind of popped up on my screen. It asks about, right, okay. It asks about, thank you. Like SQL Server is the Microsoft, like SQL Server Developer is the Microsoft Visual Studio Community also free? Yes, it is free. And as we had indicated before, it requires a subscription, a free subscription to the Visual Studio Dev Essentials. You can pick up a little bit more information about all these products at visualstudio.com/free developer offers. It'll tell you all about what the requirements are as well as where you can download these tools for your personal or business use. That's all the questions I have in front of me. Sean, is there any others that have come in?
Thanks, Tim. we have one question from the audience. It has to do with SQL server licensing. And the question is, when is SQL server license required for AG replica database, if read-only is on or not? Any difference between EE and SE in these scenarios?
Thank you. So the question is, when is SQL server license required for a replica database? Replication in the form of disaster recovery is covered unlicensed for the primary node when the primary node is covered by software assurance. There is no difference between Enterprise Edition and Standard Edition in this case. The function of software assurance makes it an available benefit to you. Now, other replication outside of disaster recovery requires full licensing. So the rules around that unlicensed DR server suggests that the license, there's only one per primary node, and B, that primary node, or that secondary node, I should say, is not used for any use such as workload balancing or ad hoc querying, other than for true disaster recovery. And then I guess the third part of that is that it's limited to testing just a few times per year. So you can have it up and running, but you can only have it up and running for those periods of time for testing, and you can only have it replicating for the purposes of disaster recovery and not any other point.
All right, thank you, Tim. That wraps up all the questions we have for today. If you have additional questions, please contact us at info@miroconsulting.com, and we can have a one-on-one session with you and your team and answer any questions you might have. You can also reach us on the web at miroconsulting.com, as well as you can give us a call at 732-738-8511, extension 1208. Again, that's 732-738-8511, extension 1208. This concludes the webinar for today. Thank you very much and have a great day.